It happened on a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. Mondays are for grand pronouncements, Fridays are for dramatic exits, Tuesdays are for cosmic accidents. There was no warning, no strange light in the sky, no tremor in the ground beneath your feet. The universe did not hold its breath. You were simply there, and then you were not. To you, nothing seemed to change. The coffee was still brewing on your counter. The traffic was still backed up on the interstate. Children were still learning their multiplication tables. It was a perfectly normal, perfectly boring Tuesday. The great shift was completely imperceptible to your entire species. You did not feel the change. You did not see it, because the change was everything a seeing thing is not. You had become invisible, not just to yourselves, but to the fundamental laws of the cosmos. Light no longer bounced off your skin. Gravity barely acknowledged your mass. You had stepped sideways out of reality. The transition was silent. It was seamless. You became a civilization of ghosts. You were adrift in a sea of non-existence. Your planet, your colonies, your starships, all of it slipped into the veil. A pocket dimension you never knew existed. An echo of the universe you once called home. This was not a plan. It was not a weapon. It was a mistake. A spectacular, universe-altering mistake. Your scientists had been experimenting. They were trying to build a new kind of power source. A generator that tapped into the energy of space-time itself. They got a little more than they bargained for. They called it the Kronos Field Project. A name that sounded impressive in board meetings. It was meant to solve your energy crisis forever. To give you limitless, clean power. The lead scientist even made a joke. He said they were tickling the dragon's tail. It turned out the dragon was very, very ticklish. The field went active for less than a nanosecond. But a nanosecond was all it took. It did not explode. It bloomed. An invisible wave expanded at impossible speeds. It washed over Earth. It swept through the solar system. It covered every ship, every station, every human life. It pushed you all into the veil. And then it was over. The project's supercomputers reported a minor hiccup, a data anomaly that was quickly dismissed. They rebooted the system. Everything seemed fine. On your side of the veil, life went on. You were blissfully unaware of your new condition. You were the most powerful ghosts in history. You just did not know it yet. For you, the sun still shone. The stars still twinkled. The universe still looked the same. But you were looking at a memory. A projection on the wall of your new dimensional home. The real universe could no longer see you at all. You had vanished without a trace. It was the greatest disappearing act in history. And you did not even know you were on stage. The galactic community, however, was about to notice. They were about to discover that their rowdy, unpredictable neighbors had gone missing. And they would start asking questions. Questions you could not answer. You were completely cut off. Communication signals could not cross the veil. Your radio waves dissipated into nothing. Your laser messages never arrived. You were shouting into a void that could not hear you. Humanity was alone, in a way it had never been before. A nation of whispers in a silent theater. The quiet lasted for 3 days. 3 days of cosmic ignorance. Then the first visitors arrived. They were not prepared for what they would find. Or rather, what they would not find. The biggest mystery in star science was about to begin. And you were the star of the show. The first clue something was wrong came from the Cathar, a species of crystalline beings from a nearby star. They were scheduled for a trade summit on Mars. Their ship, a beautiful thing of spinning rings, arrived on time. The Cathar were known for their punctuality and their utter lack of a sense of humor. Their ship hailed the Martian orbital control. There was no response. This was unusual. Humans were noisy. Their networks chattered constantly. The silence was unnerving. The Cathar captain tried again. Still nothing. Just the cold static of empty space. They scanned the planet. Their sensors showed a thriving atmosphere. They detected stable power grids. They saw sprawling cities. Everything was exactly as their charts indicated. But the biosensors showed nothing. Absolutely zero signs of life. Not a single human. Not an animal. Not even a microbe. This was impossible. The Cathar recalibrated their scanners. They ran diagnostics on their own ship. The results were the same. A planet teeming with technology. A world filled with empty shells. The captain, a being named Xylos, grew concerned. He ordered a shuttle to descend. The shuttle landed at the Ares Station spaceport. The docking bay was open and waiting. The lights were on. The air was breathable. But the welcome committee was missing. There were no dignitaries, no security guards, no overenthusiastic tourism bots. Just an eerie, profound silence. Xylos and his guards stepped out. Their crystalline bodies shimmered in the artificial light. They walked through the empty terminal. Luggage was still on the carousels. Half-eaten food sat on tables in the food court. A child's toy lay abandoned on the floor. It was a scene from a nightmare. They found the Grand Council chamber. The room was prepared for the summit. A long table was polished to a mirror shine. Water pitchers sat at every seat. Name placards were perfectly aligned. The one for Ambassador Xylos was right at the front. And across from it, the empty chair for the human representative. Every throne was empty. The entire city was a ghost town. They broadcast a high-frequency alert. They warned that the human homeworld was vacant. The news spread like a shockwave. Fleets from a dozen species warped to Earth. They came to see for themselves. The scenes were the same everywhere. London, a city of silent pubs and empty buses. Tokyo, a metropolis of frozen neon and quiet streets. New York, a concrete giant with no beating heart. The aliens walked your world with a sense of dread. They were explorers in a planetary museum. They found your homes. They saw pictures of your families on the walls. They saw your pets' food bowls, still full. They saw your ships in their docks, fully fueled. Everything was left behind. As if 10 billion people simply decided to stand up and walk away from existence itself. It made no sense. Some aliens were terrified. They believed a new weapon had been unleashed. A power that could erase life without a trace. Others were suspicious. They thought it was a trick. A classic human maneuver of misdirection. You were known for being clever, and sometimes a little too theatrical. One ambassador from the reptilian Gorn hegemony had a theory. He believed you had ascended, that you had achieved a higher state of being. He gave a long speech about it. Most other delegates just thought he had been reading too much fantasy. It was a nice thought, but not very practical. The truth was far stranger. You were still there, standing right next to them. You watched them from the veil. You saw the confusion on their faces. You saw their probes meticulously scanning empty rooms. You tried to shout, to wave your arms, but they looked right through you. It was like watching a movie of your own life, a movie where you were the ghost. This was a lonely, frustrating existence. You were prisoners in your own homes, spectators of your own legacy. The initial shock gave way to a slow, dawning horror. You were not just invisible. You were disconnected from everything you had ever known. A century passed, 100 years in the silent veil. For you, time flowed differently. It felt like a long, strange dream. Your society adapted. You learned to live in your new spectral state. You maintained your cities. You advanced your technology. You became masters of your dimensional prison. But the galaxy did not forget you. The mystery of the vanished ones became a legend, a story told to young aliens across the stars. Dozens of species sent expeditions. They established research outposts on Earth and your colonies. They studied your abandoned technology. They tried to unravel the enigma. They called it the Great Ghost Hunt. Probes scoured every inch of your former territory. They mapped your empty cities again and again. They analyzed the strange energy signature left behind, the faint echo of the Chronos field. They gave it a name. They called it the Veil. They knew it was a dimensional anomaly. They just could not figure out how to open it, or what was inside. Their best experts theorized for decades. They wrote papers on the human enigma. It was the ultimate puzzle, a civilization that disappeared at the height of its power. They found your art. Your music still played on forgotten devices. Your stories were still stored on data drives. They learned a lot about you. They saw your love for drama, your capacity for great kindness, and your equal capacity for great foolishness. They felt like they knew you. Yet you were gone. Some of your technology was reverse engineered. Your medical advances saved millions of lives. Your agricultural techniques fed starving worlds. You became saviors in your absence. Your legacy was one of generosity. It was a little ironic. You never got to see the good you were doing. A few scavenger species tried to loot your worlds. They landed in your cities with greedy eyes. They tried to steal your ships. They tried to dismantle your infrastructure. It never ended well for them. Your automated defense systems were still active, and they were very, very efficient. A pirate crew once tried to tow a skyscraper from Dubai. Your defense grid identified the illegal action. It deployed a swarm of construction drones. The drones did not attack the pirates. They simply dismantled the pirate ship piece by piece and used the materials to repair a nearby bridge. The pirates were left stranded and deeply embarrassed. The story became a minor classic in galactic shipping lanes. The galaxy mostly treated your worlds as protected heritage sites. They were monuments to a great and lost people, a silent testament to a mystery they might never solve. The ghost hunt continued, more out of habit than hope. They accepted that you were gone. They just wanted to know why. You watched it all unfold from your side of the veil. Your children were born into this strange new reality. They only knew a world of ghosts. They learned about the outer side from history lessons, a place where you could be seen, a place where you could touch and be touched. Your existence was peaceful. There were no more wars, no more resource shortages. The Chronos field provided limitless energy. Your society turned inward. You focused on arts, on science, on philosophy. You built a utopia inside a cage, a perfect world that nobody could see. You watched the galaxy evolve. You saw empires rise and fall. You saw new species reach for the stars. You were the silent observers of history, a role you had never asked for. You were witnesses to everything, but you could influence nothing. You were gods with your hands tied. The longing to reconnect was a constant ache, a dull pain in the heart of your civilization. You tried everything to breach the veil. You focused immense energy beams at it. You tried to create a counter-frequency. Nothing worked. The dimensional wall was absolute. You were trapped. Then, after 150 years of silence, something new appeared. Something that changed the cosmic equation. It started as a flicker in the void, a darkness that moved against the stars. It was not the absence of light. It was a devouring of light. Your long-range sensors picked it up first. A fleet of unimaginable size was approaching the galaxy. It moved with a grim, unwavering purpose. This was not an exploration fleet. It was not a trade convoy. This was an invasion, a wave of pure destruction rolling through space. They called themselves the Scourge, a name that was brutally honest. They were a civilization of predators. They moved from galaxy to galaxy. They consumed everything in their path. They stripped worlds of their resources. They enslaved or annihilated any life they found. The Scourge fleet was a horror. Their ships were jagged things of dark metal. They bristled with weapons of terrifying power. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply arrived, and they began to feed. They were the locusts of the cosmos. You watched their approach with a growing sense of dread. For the first time in over a century, a real threat had emerged, not just to one world or another, but to the entire galactic community. The same community that had been searching for you, the one you could not warn. The Scourge broadcast their intentions. It was a message sent on all frequencies. It was translated into thousands of languages. The voice was cold and full of metallic hate. It was a proclamation of doom. It spoke of their absolute power and the futility of resistance. "We are the Scourge," the voice declared. "Your time is over. The age of lesser beings has come to an end. We are your inheritors. We will take your worlds. We will take your stars. Your history will be erased. Your memory will be forgotten." The message continued. "Surrender your worlds to us. We will allow you to live as our servants. Your labor will fuel our endless expansion. Resist, and we will grant you only oblivion. Your planets will be shattered into dust. Your suns will be extinguished. The choice is yours. But choose quickly. We are not a patient people." It was the most terrifying thing you had ever heard. A declaration of galactic war. A promise of total annihilation. The galaxy was thrown into chaos. Alliances that had stood for 1,000 years fractured. Fear spread faster than any warship. Many worlds considered surrendering. Others chose to fight. Brave fleets assembled to meet the Scourge. The battles were short, and they were one-sided. The Scourge's technology was overwhelming. Their tactics were brutal and efficient. They smashed through planetary defenses. They cracked planets open like eggs. You watched from the veil as civilization after civilization fell. The Scourge were methodical. They were relentless. They started at the edge of the galaxy. They were working their way inwards, towards the core, towards the old worlds, towards Earth. Your home was not a target, not yet. To the Scourge, your solar system was just another empty region. The galactic maps showed it as abandoned territory. A ghost system belonging to a lost species. They would get to it eventually. But they had richer targets to consume first. Then, you received a message. It was not meant for you, but it was broadcast on a frequency so powerful, it momentarily pierced the veil. A desperate cry for help, a plea from a neighboring system, the world of the Xylar, a peaceful species of artists and poets. The Xylar were not warriors. Their planet was a paradise of lush jungles and gentle seas. They had no fleet to speak of. Their world was next in the Scourge's path. The Scourge had given them an ultimatum: surrender in one day, or be destroyed. The Xylar chose to beg for a savior. "We call upon any who can hear us," the Xylar leader pleaded. Her voice was filled with sorrow. "We are a people of peace. We have done no harm. The devourers are at our door. Our world will be unmade. Is there no one left with courage? Is the galaxy truly this cold?" Her message repeated on a loop. A prayer sent into the darkness. Most of the galaxy heard it, but no one responded. The nearest fleets were broken and scattered. The major powers were too busy fortifying their own borders. No one was coming to save the Xylar. They were alone. Except they were not. You had heard their call. The message had reached you in your invisible kingdom. It sparked a fire in the human spirit. A fire that had been dormant for over a century. The call to protect the defenseless. The instinct to stand against the bully. A debate raged across your councils. It was the most important discussion in your new history. To intervene meant revealing yourselves. It meant showing the Scourge that this empty territory was not empty at all. It meant inviting a war with a foe who could shatter planets. The risk was immense. If the Scourge learned of the Veil, they would stop at nothing to breach it. They would want your limitless energy. They would want your protected home. You had a choice. Stay hidden in your safe utopia, or risk everything for a species you had never met. The debate was fierce, but it was short. You had spent 150 years as spectators. You had watched history unfold without you. But you were not ghosts. You were humans. And humans do not stand by when someone asks for help. The decision was made. You would not reveal yourselves, not yet. But you would act. You would use your invisibility as a weapon. You would become the phantom saviors the Xylar were praying for. You would remind the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Not with words, but with fire. Your ghost fleet mobilized. For the first time in over a century, your warships powered up their engines. These were not the ships the galaxy remembered. In your isolation, you had not stopped innovating. Your vessels were things of impossible grace and power. They moved without a sound. They generated no heat. They reflected no light. They were the perfect stealth ships. Your crews took their stations, men and women born in the Veil. They had trained their whole lives for a war they never thought would come. Now it was here. Thousands of ships slipped out of your solar system. They moved through the Veil, parallel to normal space. They could see the Scourge fleet assembling. They could see the terrified planet of the Xylar. The enemy was confident, arrogant. They had no idea they were being watched. Your fleet commander, a woman named Eva Rostova, gave the order. "We are the ghosts of Earth," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "Let's give these monsters something to be afraid of. Engage at will. Leave none of them standing." Your invisible ships warped into the Xylar system. They emerged inside the Scourge fleet's formation. They were surrounded by the enemy. But they were completely undetected. The Scourge ships were massive, ugly things. They sat there, poised to unleash hellfire. They were about to receive it instead. The attack of the Phantoms began. There was no battle cry, no grand declaration of war. Just a sudden, silent storm of destruction. Your ship's main weapons were gravitic lances. They fired focused beams of immense gravitational force. They did not explode. They simply crushed their targets into oblivion. A Scourge battlecruiser suddenly folded in on itself. Its half-mile-long frame twisted like a piece of paper. It collapsed into a tiny, super-dense ball of wreckage. No explosion, no flash, just a quiet and complete erasure. Its neighbor met the same fate a second later. Panic erupted on the Scourge command decks. Their sensors showed nothing. There were no incoming weapon signatures, no enemy ships on any scanner. But their vessels were dying. One by one, they were being silently annihilated. It was as if the universe itself had turned against them. Some Scourge ships fired their weapons blindly. They filled the space around them with plasma and missiles. The weapons found no targets. They flew harmlessly through your invisible fleet. It was like trying to shoot a fog. Your ships moved with effortless grace between the blasts. One of your smaller corvettes had a close call. A Scourge destroyer exploded just a little too close. The shockwave rattled the corvette's shields. The pilot, a young man named Kenji, let out a laugh. "They're not very good at this," he commented to his co-pilot. "It's like they've never fought a ghost before." That was one way to put it. The Scourge admiral was in a state of shock. His fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was being dismantled. He screamed at his sensor officers. "Find them," he roared. "Find what is doing this." They had no answers for him. There was nothing to find. Just a graveyard of his own ships. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted for 17 minutes. In that time, your ghost fleet eliminated over 300 Scourge warships. You did not lose a single ship. You did not suffer a single casualty. It was the most one-sided victory in the history of space combat. Commander Rostova gave the order to withdraw. You had made your point. You left a handful of smaller Scourge ships alive. You wanted them to carry the story. You wanted them to spread the word. The survivors fled the system in terror. They broadcast a frantic, garbled message. The message spoke of phantoms, of an unseen enemy that struck from nowhere, an enemy that could not be fought, an enemy that did not obey the laws of physics. The Scourge's proclamation of doom had been answered, not with words, but with a chilling silence. On the planet Xylar, the people watched in stunned disbelief. One moment, the fleet of their doom filled their sky. The next, it was gone, torn apart by an invisible force. They did not know who had saved them. They only knew that a miracle had occurred. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The retreating Scourge's panicked transmissions were intercepted. The story was pieced together. An entire Scourge battle group had been wiped out, destroyed without a single enemy ship being seen. The galaxy was buzzing. They called you the Guardians, the Phantom Fleet, the Silent Saviors. Whispers turned into legends. Hope began to return to a terrified galaxy. The Scourge were not invincible. Someone was fighting back. Someone powerful enough to make their fleets disappear. The Gorn Hegemony Ambassador, the one who thought you ascended, was insufferable. He claimed it was proof of his theory, that you had returned as divine beings to protect the lesser races. Most people still thought he was crazy. But they were starting to wonder. Could the vanished humans be responsible? The Scourge were enraged. Their pride was wounded. They had been humiliated. Their leader, a being known only as the Overlord, demanded answers. He diverted huge resources to studying the battle. He wanted to know what had hit his fleet and how he could kill it. Within the veil, your victory was celebrated. But it was a quiet celebration. You knew what you had done. You had poked the dragon. You had kicked the hornet's nest. You had written a check that your entire species might have to cash. The debate in your councils resumed, with more urgency than ever. "Walk, we cannot fight this war from the shadows forever," one leader argued. "We have shown our hand. The Scourge will not rest until they find us. We must reveal ourselves. We must rally the galaxy and lead the fight." "And what then?" another countered. Revelation means unending war. The Scourge will focus all their might on us. Our home, our children, will become their primary target. Is that a price you are willing to pay for the Xylar? The question hung in the air. You had won the battle. But you may have started a war that could not be won. To reveal yourselves now would be a declaration. It would unite the other races behind you. But it would also paint a giant target on your back. To remain hidden meant continuing the phantom attacks, picking off Scourge fleets when you could. It was a safer strategy. But it would not be enough to win the war. It would only prolong the galaxy's suffering. It was a choice between your safety and everyone else's. Humanity was divided. For the first time in their new history, there was a real fracture in their society. The Revealers versus the Remainers, the Idealists versus the Pragmatists. The debate was passionate. It was desperate, because everyone knew that the fate of the galaxy might rest on their decision. While you debated, the enemy was adapting. The Scourge were many things, but they were not stupid. They were a civilization that had conquered countless worlds. They knew how to learn. They knew how to evolve. And they had a new obsession: finding the ghosts that haunted them. The Scourge Overlord poured all his resources into one project: developing a sensor that could see the unseen. They analyzed the wreckage from the Xylar system. They found faint energy traces on the debris, the same energy signature the galaxy had called the Veil. The Scourge now had a lead. They began to develop new scanning technologies. Cruel experiments were conducted on captured populations. They twisted physics in ways that were obscene. They were trying to build a new kind of eye, an eye that could pierce the veil, an eye that could see a ghost. You monitored their progress with growing alarm. Your intelligence reported that they were getting close. Their new scanners were still prototypes, but they were showing promise. They could detect faint ripples in space-time, the very ripples your ships made when they moved through the veil. It was a race against time. You had to decide your next move before the Scourge could see you. The debate inside the veil grew more frantic. Factions formed, tempers frayed. The unity you had enjoyed for a century began to crack. The Scourge decided to force your hand. They knew you were protectors. They knew you intervened to save the defenseless. So they decided to set a trap. They chose their bait carefully. A small, isolated colony on a moon called Cygnus X1. The colony was populated by a species called the Fen, a peaceful race of avian humanoids. They were of no strategic value. Their world had no resources the Scourge wanted. It was a pointless target. And that was the point. Attacking it served only one purpose: to draw out the ghosts. The Scourge sent a small fleet to Cygnus X1, just one capital ship and a few escorts. But with them, they brought their new toy, a prototype veil scanner. They broadcast their intentions in the clear. They announced they would sterilize the colony in 12 hours. They were daring you to intervene. It was a public challenge. The entire galaxy was watching. They knew the Phantom Fleet would likely respond. And when you did, the Scourge would be waiting. Not just with weapons, but with their new eyes. They were baiting the trap. The news of the Scourge's move reached your councils. It silenced the debate instantly. The time for talking was over. The enemy had made the next move. Now you had to respond. The choice was clear, and it was brutal. Let the Fen colony die to protect your secret, or walk into a trap to save them. It was the Xylar dilemma all over again. But this time, the stakes were higher. This time, the enemy was watching for you. There was no easy answer. There was no safe path. Commander Rostova stood before the High Council. Her face was grim. They are forcing our hand, she said simply. If we do not act, we show them we can be cowed. We show them that our protection has a limit. Fear will rule the galaxy again, and all those we save will live in terror of being the next bait. But if we go, we walk into their trap, a council member argued. They will see us. They will know what we are. The war will come to our doorstep. The war is already at our doorstep, Rostova replied. It has been since the day we fired our first shot. We have only been pretending otherwise. We are not ghosts. We are not guardians. We are soldiers, and soldiers have a duty. Her words settled the matter. The decision was made. You would go to Cygnus X1, you would save the Fen, and you would face the consequences. The time for hiding was over. The time for revelation was at hand. The Ghost Fleet mobilized once more. But this time, the mood was different. There was no thrill of the unknown, no confidence of an easy victory. Just a grim resolve, a quiet determination. Every crew member knew what this mission meant. They were going to war, truly and openly. As your fleet prepared to warp, a final command was given. An order that would change the course of history. An order that would redefine your place in the universe. Commander Rostova opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was steady, but it carried the weight of 150 years of silence. All ships, she said. On my mark, disengage the veil projectors. We go into this battle with our eyes open, and we will be seen. Your fleets shimmered into existence. For the first time in a century and a half, human ships were visible to the naked eye. They appeared in a cascade of light and color, billions of tons of matter rejoining reality. The effect was breathtaking. The universe had a new color in its palette. You were no longer ghosts. You had chosen to become visible once more. You were about to show the galaxy and the Scourge who you really were. Not phantoms, not whispers in the void, but a civilization that had mastered the shadows. A people ready to step back into the light. The Scourge fleet at Cygnus X1 was waiting. Their new veil scanner was active. They were hoping to catch a flicker, a ripple, a sign of your approach. They were not prepared for what they saw. On their main view screen, an entire armada appeared from nowhere. Thousands of ships. Gleaming in the light of the nearby star, they were not the blocky, utilitarian ships of old humanity. These were works of art, sleek, elegant vessels that looked more like sculptures than warships. They radiated power. They radiated confidence. The Scourge commander stared at his screen in disbelief. This was not what he expected. He was hunting for ghosts. He had found titans. His trap had worked. But the creature that walked into it was far larger and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Across the galaxy, the same image appeared on every screen. The news networks that had been broadcasting the Fen's plight suddenly had a new story. The Phantom Fleet had a face, and it was human. The Gorn ambassador probably fainted. The universe held its breath. They saw your ships. They saw the symbol emblazoned on their hulls, the ancient symbol of Earth. A blue circle teeming with life. A symbol of a people long thought dead. A people who had just returned from the grave. The galaxy watched in awe. They were not just seeing a fleet. They were seeing a legend come to life. The mystery of the vanished ones was solved. They had not ascended. They had not died. They had been waiting. And now they were back. The age of ghosts was over. The age of titans had begun.